In this particular video, we are going to cover some of the frequently asked questions on RFEs or requests for evidence that USCIS will send to a petitioner or an applicant. And let's start right away with the first question, which is, what is an RFE? What is a request for evidence? Just like the name suggests, what USCIS is telling you is that they don't have all the information available to proceed with your case at that particular stage of the game. And so they sent you a letter requiring that you give them additional information. And typically these are structural things that they need, things like they need an additional form, or there's some kind of eligibility which you're not meeting based on the data that you provided them. And so you need to provide them other things for eligibility purposes. And so that's the first question. Another question is, how long does USCIS take to review an RFE? And so once you've responded to an RFE, typically you're looking at about 3 weeks. At least during this day and age. It always changes, it varies sometimes, so just be mindful of the time frame. And then the other question is, how do you respond to an RFE? I received an RFE, how do I respond to it? The question will vary a little bit based on what type of RFE it is, what does it involve, and because there are different types of RFEs, the responses will vary too. But generally, USCIS, what they're telling you is that there's something that you did not provide and they need that information to move forward. And so what you want to do is you want to do exactly what they're asking you, and even go above and beyond if you can. And so you need to put together the documentation that they need, or I mean, a lot of times it's, for example, a sponsorship requirement that you haven't met, or maybe a birth certificate requirement that you haven't met. And so you want to get these types of information. So you send back the letter that they sent you, so that's at the top, and then underneath you put in everything that they needed. So letter at the top, you need to respond back with that letter and where they told you to send the information to. They'll have an address typically, and then underneath you'll have the rest of the packet. Another question that comes up is, what kind of evidence does USCIS request in an RFE? And really that varies, so there's no one way to answer that question. It's a plethora of types of evidence that they need. And so sometimes they need evidence, meaning facts about your life or about your case. Sometimes they need a form that you didn't fill out. Sometimes they need proof of, let's say, income and things like that. So it really varies. I cannot answer that for all the different cases. What are the reasons for an RFE? Another question that comes up, what are the reasons for an RFE? Again, it depends on your case, depends on what you did not include. So the reason is you did not include something, and so then they need that, and so that's the reason for the RFE or for the request for evidence. Another question that comes up is, what will happen if I don't respond to the RFE? You have to respond to problems. They don't just go away. The RFE, well, will go away, but your case will go with it. And so your case gets denied unless you respond to that RFE. So it's critical that you respond to the RFE. Not only you respond to it, but you respond to it in the time that they told you, and send it to the place that they told you. And you send the information that they asked for. What happens? Another question is, what happens after a request for evidence? So think of it like kind of a ping pong match. And so you didn't do something, USCIS comes back with an RFE saying we need this, you get all the requisite information, you send it back to them. Now they get the new information, and now they take the next step on your case, and typically you will receive what's called an NOA, or a notice of action. And so with a notice of action, they will tell you, they either, they might tell you they approved your case, they might tell you come for an interview, and so something happened in your case. So that's what you'll have next, and that will be, it could be 2 to 4 weeks. Another question that comes up is, what's the difference between an RFE and a NOID, or a Notice of Intent to Deny? An RFE is typically structural, meaning that an RFE has to do with eligibility requirements. You know, you didn't fill out a form, you didn't meet the birth certificate requirement, you didn't meet sponsorship requirements, and a bunch of others. A NOID, on the other hand, and typically this comes up a lot with spousal green cards, you know, or green card for your loved one, for marriage green cards. A NOID is a Notice of Intent to Deny, meaning that we got all the information and the eligibility requirements are there, but based on the evidence and the facts of the case, you're not convincing us. And so what they're telling you is that we will deny your case. It's looking right now like you don't have the information that we need. It's looking right now like that we don't believe what you have. So RFEs, you just don't have it. NOID is, we don't believe you. And so the difference in outcome is drastic too. So if you don't respond to an RFE, your case might be denied, and then you might be able to refile. But with a NOID, you want to be very careful, because your case could be denied in such a way that there's a penalty for it, and you know, your case is seen as fraudulent, or there could be all kinds of issues that come up with it. And you really want to talk to an attorney, especially with a NOID. And we've done a ton of NOIDs and RFEs as well, but both cases are quite tricky, but especially the NOID. And then the last question that comes up with RFEs is, I have premium processing. How long does it take to receive an RFE notice with premium processing? And so premium processing, some types of cases, such as the investor visa or some work visas, have a premium processing, which basically means that they process your case in a lot shorter of a time span than regular processing. And so think of the time it will take them during premium processing the same as the time it will take them to make a decision on your case. And so if they were required to make a decision in 2 weeks in your case because you paid for premium processing, it will be the same thing for an RFE. And so just expect a response back in 2 weeks' time, typically, for or whatever the premium processing time frame is for that particular visa type. And that gives you some of the frequently asked questions about RFEs. Thank you.